So our next session is going to be a debrief from the Deploy dialogues. And I'm delighted to be able to be joined on stage by Ross Brindle, who's the Chief Executive Officer and founder for Nexight Group. They do stakeholder engagement, strategic planning, workshops in the public and private sector all around the world, 6 continents. Over 700 of these collaborative workshops in energy and advanced materials manufacturing and health. As Jigar mentioned yesterday, they led a very interesting initiative and very high impact one around malaria with the Gates Foundation. Ross, if you would join me on stage. So Ross, can we first talk about why do you think these dialogues happen? Why were they important?
Sure. The goal of this meeting, as I understood it, was to build trust. And how do you build trust? You build trust by communicating, talking, maybe being a little bit vulnerable, sharing information, and listening really carefully to the party with which you're trying to build trust. And so when we were planning this event, we thought, how could we structure an engagement like that between the DOE and all of our private sector parties who are joining us today with 600 people? Oh, that's tough. It's tough to have all of those factors together with 600 people. So we thought, why don't we form some smaller dialogue sessions that were focused on creating the conditions to build greater trust between the private sector and the public sector, which is the foundation of effective public-private partnerships. Money helps, clarity helps, regulations help, but trust is really essential for these effective partnerships.
Okay, that sounds lovely. Mm-hmm. What's the tangible output? What's the tangible reason why?
Yep. We need to understand how to move faster. And we've heard this throughout the whole time, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have the time to move slowly. We have to find new solutions to these challenges. And all of us are on the conference circuit. We go to these events month after month, year after year, and we hear similar conversations, and there's some incremental moving forward. And the time for incremental progress is done. We have to move faster. And so the tangible output from these dialogues is intended to be specific actions that we can take hand in hand, the Department of Energy walking hand in hand with the private sector, as well as when DOE steps away. We know that although there's many billions of dollars being invested by the Department of Energy and by this administration, and that's historic and to be celebrated, it's not enough. It's not nearly enough. The private sector has to lead this government-enabled transformation. And so specifics, what can we do tomorrow? What can we do in the next 12 months? What can we do in the next 18 months to bend the curve and be more successful in this partnership? That was the goal.
Good. All right. What'd you find out? Did you get any answers to those questions?
We did.
From the 8 dialogues?
We did. We got some really interesting answers.
So relieved.
Yeah, we got some
good.
really interesting answers, and I can't share all of them. And I personally was only in 2 of the dialogues. And so I got some debriefs from my colleagues, and I have a few that I can share with you. So first of all, and this is kind of an interesting one. I heard this from multiple groups. DOE and the stakeholder engagement community, the community advocacy groups, the environmental advocacy groups, have not embraced all parts of the solution with equal fervor.
What does that mean?
And so, for example, carbon capture and storage.
Right.
Some of the environmental groups are not exactly excited to support CCS, at least the stakeholders in the room felt that way. And direct air capture. There's a really positive story to be told there, and maybe we're not telling that story quite as effectively. With other parts of the climate solution, there seems to be a full-throated embrace.
Yeah, but those are difficult, right? I mean, direct air capture is expensive. right? It's the
Certainly
technological aspect.
expensive, certainly
Right.
difficult. There are challenges, but that doesn't mean that they're not part of the answer here. Given the urgency, the amount of the ability to take certain options and say, well, maybe if we get lucky, that one will be part of the answer. I don't think that's the right approach. I think we need to take all solutions that we have on the table need to be part of our answer, given the urgency, given the importance of what we're trying to do.
And was the insight that all those different stakeholders, the ones who were skeptic for whatever reasons, they need to be more engaged or more dialogue?
Yeah, that's right. So how do we communicate, for example, with environmental advocacy groups about the benefits of CCS as an industrial decarbonization tool, for example, to bring them along in this journey so they can be more strongly advocating for those solutions, not as the answer, but as part of the answer. Or for direct air capture, there are benefits to communities. It's a new technology. There's always a little bit of uncertainty and skepticism, but there's a really positive story, an economic and a job story, and a climate change benefit story. And we can do a better job of telling that story than we're doing today. That's one.
Other ones?
Sure. So for the virtual power plant session, and I wasn't in this session, so I may not get all of the details quite right, but
That was a seriously popular one.
it was.
People were like lining up the door going, I gotta get in, I gotta get in.
And I heard the discussion was hot, or maybe just the temperature of the room was
That was also
hot.
true.
I think for those of you who were there, the room was hot. But I'm gonna pull out my note to try to get this one correct so I share it with you accurately. The comment here was that we need to socialize benefits rather than just socializing costs. Let the utilities make a rate case based on performance improvements across the grid, rather than just the more quantifiable benefits that are available where, for example, distributed energy resource investments are being made. And so how can we do that? That's one specific issue around changing the way that utilities are able to make a rate case. And I don't know, I can't go much further in details there because, again, I wasn't personally in that room, but when I was talking to my colleagues there, they were really excited and felt like the group had a lot of energy around that particular shift in mindset and potentially the way that utilities can make a rate case that would be a little bit different and maybe spread the benefits to communities that heretofore have been somewhat neglected.
Excellent. What else?
What else can I have for you? We talked about that one. Regulatory capacity building. So there's a wave of investment that's happening, and now a wave of new applications for projects. And the regulatory authorities at the local level, at the state level, and at the national level are overwhelmed in two different dimensions. They don't have the technical expertise in some of these advanced technologies to properly review the regulatory submissions in some cases. And certainly they do not have the capacity, just the people. The regulatory review systems don't have the capacity needed to move at the pace that's going to be required, and really at the pace that industry is moving. So that bottleneck is something that we need a very targeted intervention to try to address at all three levels. That's another one.
Good.
You want another?
Yes, please.
Okay. Trying to find my favorite. I have two more for you.
Good.
And the one that I'll mention now builds on the conversation we just heard around community engagement. So the comment was made that we have spent the last 100 years in the energy sector competing on the basis of our technical and engineering prowess. And as organizations, we've built tremendous technical capabilities. And that provides us with the ability to safely and reliably produce our energy products, transport them around the country, et cetera. In the future, the skill set needed to effectively engage with communities will be the differentiator among companies. That companies will win or lose based on how successful they undertake community engagement. Because if they fail or stumble in community engagement, their projects won't get off the ground. And the companies who do this effectively will be able to move forward hand in hand with their communities.
So it's the ultimate competitive advantage?
It's a competitive
emerging
advantage.
Competitive advantage.
It is an emerging competitive advantage that requires different
Skill
skills,
sets, yeah.
different skill sets. I thought that was really interesting. And an anecdote, one of the asset owner operators, so this is not an environmental or a labor NGO speaking, but an asset owner operator, talked about getting a project started in the local community and having something unexpected happen that led to a larger than anticipated community resistance before the project was up and running. And that person said, because they had engaged with a unionized workforce, the direct quote was, "The union came to these town halls and stood like a wall to protect the project, and the project went forward." And that was an example of effective community engagement that will let this company move faster than their competitors because of that choice that they made and the way that choice rippled effect into their community engagement approach.
And that resonates with the point that was covered yesterday.
It does. It does very much. It does very much. It does.
Excellent. Any personal observations? I mean, you've done these around the world,
Yeah.
6 continents.
I know. You have to get me to
Continents are there.
Antarctica. You have to get me to Antarctica. Come on. So yeah, personal observations here. You mentioned that I've done some work in the malaria vaccine world. So maybe
Yeah.
just by contrast, in that community, it's very easy to create urgency. You can just cite the number of children that died during the meeting. And so there's always a
That'll do
sense
it.
of urgency in the public health community that people are suffering, people are dying, we have to move faster. And yet everyone in the room hopes that they're going to be the one that wins the Nobel Prize. And that's not an exaggeration, right? The scientific, the people who end up creating the most successful malaria vaccine may win the Nobel Prize, right? So how do you get a community like that to come together and work together? It's difficult, but there's like a moral obligation. I've been working in energy and this community for 25 years, and I haven't felt that until this meeting. I haven't felt that same level of urgency and, to put it this way, dire consequence. If we fail, if we get this wrong, the effect that our children and our grandchildren will have to deal with. That is new, I think, in this energy sector, something I haven't seen a whole lot in the last 25 years. So that personal observation has me very enthusiastic, very enthusiastic.
That's cool.
Very enthusiastic in a way that I'm excited to tell my kids about when I get home. And that level of commitment can lead to significant progress. I've worked with other industry sectors, and it's not so much what happens kind of on the stage, but it's what happens in the wings between 2 or 3 parties that we may never know of, but that an event like this catalyzes. And I can tell that there's going to be a lot of that happening next week and next month.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So from your view, what's next? How do we move it forward?
Yeah, so what's next? I was talking with someone who said, kind of someone from DOE asking me, what can I get working on tomorrow? Literally tomorrow. And we said, well, you know, there are these hydrogen hubs and all of these hubs, and one of the needs was not just categorizing the technical learnings, but the regulatory learnings, and can we create templates around how to navigate financing and purchase agreements? And like, oh, I can call somebody tomorrow to begin working at that. So my hope is that in addition to, yes, we'll document all of the findings from the
100
dialogues.
pages of notes.
Yeah, there'll be lots of notes, and eventually we'll have something that's shareable and suitable for everybody to receive. Of course, you'll receive that. DOE will receive that much sooner and be looking to take actions right away. What I really hope happens, the most important thing that I hope happens is that every single person in this room has plans tomorrow. Or maybe we're a little tired tomorrow, but next week, who are you following up with? Next week, what are you taking from this gathering that you intend to act upon? You cannot sit back and wait for the DOE to fix this problem. And DOE cannot sit back and wait for industry to fix this problem. It is too big and too complex for any one organization to solve on its own. We have to work together. And working together in brass tacks means each person does something. We are the people who will make the change. So I hope that that's going to happen for each person in this room.
Excellent. That was great.